All right, welcome to the SoMe Physician Discussion Panel following our Tuesday lecture series. This week, Debra Eckerling brought us goal-setting tips through the DEB method, and we're going to cover some of those and also share our own perspectives on success stories, perhaps challenges with goal-setting, methods that we use, and our own perspectives. I have three fantastic physicians joining me this evening, and I'd like to take a minute for you to tell everyone where you are, what your specialty is, what you've been up to recently, and perhaps some early tips from goal setting from your perspective. Dr. Kara Pepper, share with us.
Hi, I'm Kara Pepper. I'm a practicing primary care internist in Atlanta, Georgia, and a coach for physicians who are going through transition. Goal setting. I like to start with what is going well. It's easy to think about all the things that we need to improve on, all the things that we want to reach out for, but knowing what your strengths are is a really great place to start. So you can say, this is what my zone of genius is, and let me start from there. And then when you lay out a plan for goals, I like to do just one per quarter. That's it. Because we've got to develop the habit and get really good at it. And so, especially as New Year's Eve is tomorrow, everyone's like, I want to lose weight, start exercising, reform my finances, go back to church, whatever, all the things. Then we never do them because it's just too much because we're real life humans. So just one per quarter. So one tiny change that will work, practice it for 3 months, and then pick up something else.
Ooh, fantastic and challenging. Constraint and celebrating successes. All right, here we go. Dr. Parastoo, Jangouk, where are you? And tell us what's happening for you with goal setting.
So I'm a practicing gastroenterologist in Austin, Texas, and I'm a life coach as well. So it's actually a very timely and interesting topic. So I'm glad that we are here tonight. Just as we all know, tomorrow, so we are going to say bye to 2020. So I'm sure a lot of us, we are trying to resolve to new goals. So I think I agree with Dr. Pepper. So what I experienced myself throughout all these years trying to put in my resolution together, I think I'm trying something different this year, and I'm trying not to overwhelm myself with all these different goals. And I think what I'm trying to achieve this year is to add some fun, to the whole process. And don't forget that I think we all need to enjoy the process. It's not just the end and the goal that we set. I think as long as we can just learn throughout the way and have fun, I think that's a big goal.
Mm-hmm. I think so important. And that really resonates with me with my coach recently. I was working through goals for the year, and that was we had to pick three. Three seemed fair, but I distributed over the year. I'm still within Carol's rules here. That the third was, right, to just have more fun and be kind of more relaxed and playful with things. And that's actually simple, but probably the hardest one for me to integrate. So I love hearing that echoed here. Dr. Trina Dorrah, tell us where you are and what's coming up for you with goal setting.
Yes. So hi, my name is Trina. I am an internal medicine physician, and I practice as a hospitalist in a suburb of Austin, Texas. So I'm close to you. And I am a life coach, and I'm a women's divorce recovery coach. So I help women recover from the pain of divorce and infidelity. And so for me, one new thing that actually I have tried this year as it comes to goal setting is I actually started in December. So instead of waiting until January. So a couple goals that I had been working on, I have been wanting to start a podcast. So in one of the other groups I'm in, there's a podcast challenge. So we've already been breaking it down into small bite-sized pieces. And then I've also been doing a weight loss challenge that started in December. And so I kind of like the idea that I've already started on it. And so there's not that pressure like we talk about for January 1st, that all of a sudden I'm supposed to be some different person on January 1st than I was on December 31st. I've sort of given myself time. And then what we've been doing is just breaking it down into small bite-sized pieces, because for months I'd been saying I wanted to work on a podcast and had made no progress. But by joining this challenge where we're breaking it down into small pieces, I've made more progress than I had all year. So.
Mm-hmm. And I love that, where you can start anytime, right? And there doesn't have to be a certain finish line either. We attach things so often to these very specific calendar moments in being free to engage and disengage at will is so encouraging. I'd like to look at some of the concepts from yesterday's lecture and the DEB method. Right, so Debra Eckerling has created this simplified means of setting goals. And as you imagine, that acronym. And so the D stands for determine your mission. And the steps that were involved there were to first visualize, then to create your current bio, right? So where are you now, your future bio, and from that voice that many of us, right, in that coaching space would write it from the voice as if it already happened, and creating the mission statement and the motto. And I'd like to spend a little bit of time on those latter two, because I think it's a really helpful space to be, and also the opportunity to both be expansive in the mission statement, but then be concise in the motto, right? So it's kind of, you get to really flesh it out, but then, right, we know we need to get clear and we need to have something that we can really share with others. So I'd like to visit with each of you and see how you have worked, if you have, and I imagine in the coaching space it's come up for you, developed your mission statement and what that's been like for you. That might be for your business, right? It might be for yourself. And tell me a little bit about that and perhaps how it's led itself toward a motto or how you might utilize that. Kara, can we start with you and see any of your work around mission statement development or how you might work with your clients in doing this?
Yeah, actually, it's a thing that I work on quite a bit, is defining your why. Any intention that you have and operating from that space is a great litmus test and a mirror to determine if what you're doing is really guiding you in the right direction. So I'd done a workshop maybe a month or two ago at this point, and it really was based out of this workbook. So part of it's retrospective, again, like what are your strengths and what are those key formative moments that like really like filled your soul? What are those things? And then looking forward. So my mission statement, and that you're putting me on the spot, so I can't remember exactly what the wording is, but it's effectively like to simply show up and to serve so that I can make a difference for myself and others. That would be the paraphrase version of it. Something very concise, because I think in this performative society that we live in, where our view measures and, you know, achievement and diploma on the wall and all that stuff, it's really amazing to just know that you're worthy just by showing up and being yourself. That's all it takes. And so to really like say, how can I show up as me? And that's it. That's enough for this mission. Using that as the litmus test has been very, very helpful for me to, one, define goals that are not so out of reach and that are really, really meaningful. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, and I love that. And I'll share, you know, Deb's from yesterday. Her mission statement was use her background in systems to help as many people as possible figure out what they want and how to get it. And then her motto was goal setting simplified. And I love in yours, you practice some constraints, right? We see that coming through for you, even in the mission statement, but even that, like simply show up or simply showing up, right? To have that be your motto. I mean, that really resonates and that's encouraging and inviting. Like, oh, I just have to show up here, right? And we know that that's still a big thing, right? But to make it clear for those with whom you're working, that's it, right? Just show up and let's see what happens.
I mean, if you
That's
think
really
about your dearest friend, you know, like they don't always have the answers, but they show up when you really need them, when you're going through divorce, when you have trouble with your kids, when someone dies, you know. And for our patients, like so often we can't fix what's going on with them, and just showing up and holding space is so key. So that's been a work in progress for me.
I love that. Parastoo, tell us about your work with motto, with mission statement, how that's come through for you personally or professionally, or with your clients.
So yeah, very interesting. So I think in the whole sort of like environment that we live right now in the society, that we are more pressured towards materialistic goals. I think it's easy to forget and to get confused and just like to forget what our real whys are, because I think everybody does things for real reasons, for true reasons, but obviously there is going to be some materialistic objectives as well that needs to be met. But I think we get very confused and we get so focused on these materialistic goals in the end of the day, which interestingly are not very, I don't find them very motivating. So it doesn't really bring up that true self into the whole platform. So what I went through this a few months ago, that I felt like, okay, why am I doing this, the things that I'm doing? And it was really a big question, because I thought, okay, I don't need to do this. And I actually had I have an eligibility partner who is great. And Olufanka from LGA, and she keeps me on track. And she basically discussed actually for an hour. She just asked me, she said, oh, there is a why. You have your own why. Just tell me, and help me, think loudly and talk, and just tell her where I started all these things. And I got lost, I think, in the middle of the way. And I realized, wow, all these things that I said loudly, actually, those are my mission statements, and they're more inspiring and they're more motivating for me in order to get where I want to get. And I think it's very important to work on this mission statement to clarify that and just tap to your true self, what really matters in life for you. And in terms of a motto, I 100% agree. I think what I was thinking, something along the line that I'm trying to keep things simple this year. I felt like maybe my motto is mindset work and mindfulness for this year. And I would like to keep that in mind every day and just focus on that and try to be mindful about whatever I do.
Mm-hmm. That's so helpful. And that was echoed yesterday as well, that your mission statement and your motto can be your filter, can be your guidepost, right? So when it does feel like you're in the fray and you're, lost sight of everything, like, wait, is this in line, right? Is this actually what I want to be doing? Is it part of my why? Is it helping others? And if it's not, we can let it go, right? So it can be that way to help us filter and practice some of that constraints. I love that example. I'm so glad you have that partner. That accountability partnership is so powerful.
Indeed.
Yeah. All right, Trina, it sounds like you may have a couple, right, in these different work that you're doing with your own goals and the work with clients. Tell us about your mission statement and motto experience.
Right. So, whenever you get into life coaching, everybody always talks to you about creating your I help statement, who you help. And so I would say, in my I help statement, I say I want to help women get over their ex and get on with their lives. And whenever I think about my mission, and, as we talk about goal setting, I think we always have these ideas of these goals, and we say, I'm going to have all these goals. And we don't always think about the fact that along the way, there is going to be a lot of hard work that has to go into reaching these goals. As I've been learning this year, becoming a coach, building my business, a lot of failure that you have to go through, a lot of setbacks, like it's not all easy. And so whenever I think about my mission, and any time that I'm thinking, is this really worth it? Do I want to keep going? Maybe I should just quit. Then I always try to think about that woman who's out there whose husband just told her that he was cheating on her, or that woman whose partner just told them that they were leaving them. And I try to go back to how I felt during that time and put myself in their place and say, there's a woman out there who needs me. And so that's what I try to always remember for my mission, is there's somebody out there who is going through the pain that I went through, who I can be an example for, to let them know it's possible to get through this. So that's sort of what I try to keep in mind for my mission, is there's somebody out there who needs this and I can't give up. And so in terms of my motto, the two actually don't necessarily go together. My motto, I actually love this phrase. It's the phrase is release the absent. And so I got that phrase. I did a burnout retreat with Dyke Drummond from the Happy MD. And he told us this phrase, release the absent. And I tell myself this all the time, because in some of the other work that I have been doing in my coaching business, I've started running some group programs. And I guess if anybody's ever done group programs, you have all these people sign up and then they don't all show up. Or you have a webinar and you have all these people sign up, you're so excited, and then they don't show up. And so it can be very, very discouraging. And so I've been really trying to focus on this motto of releasing those that are absent and focusing on those that are present. And it has helped me so much.
Mm-hmm. That's really helpful. Thank you for sharing that. And I love your mission statement's pretty tied in there too, right? You have some good, concise clarity in that space as well. So as we have the mission and the motto, I'm going to work on pronouncing my T's more effectively here. The E in the DEB method is explore your options. And so kind of the parts involved in this are to begin directed journaling, to list common themes, to identify options, to research possibilities and select a destination. And this one, I want to spend a little bit of time with those opening concepts. And the idea behind the directed journaling that Debra shared was to spend 3 to 5 sessions of 15 minutes each, where you kind of journal and ask about the why and what do you want to do and what are my goals, and to not review them until you've done however many you're going to do, right? So at the end of the 5, then you come back and take this inventory, because what we think, and Parastoo, I think we'll start with you, because you mentioned this, right? You kind of had this idea of what you wanted to do, but then when you distilled it down, it's like, oh wait, right? It's actually this thing. And you look for those patterns, like what came up the most in here. So if it was, that you wanted to have a podcast and that was the thing, like, did it really show up in that space, or was the topic what you actually wanted to talk about? So perhaps if you're using journaling, or you did this in that, verbal interaction with your accountability partner, how have you found that, like a way you can really boil down and get to what actually is coming up for you? Do you want to expand on that anymore?
Sure. I think actually yesterday's talk, when I was listening to the talk, this part, that directed journaling, really just popped out. And I instantly went on Amazon and ordered my journal because I actually was thinking the very same way you were saying, that, oh, wow, I haven't been doing this for a long time. Maybe that's why I sort of like got lost. Maybe I need to do this more frequently and just have a designated time, 5 times a week, or just every day if it's 5-10 minutes, just sitting and just writing whatever comes to your mind. And I feel like a lot of times I have a lot of ideas, just like as I'm driving, or I'm seeing a patient, or I'm in grocery store. And by the time I always say, wow, this is such a great idea. I have to work on this. I have to do this, and then you never know. By the time I get out of grocery store, I get to the destination, I totally forget. And I think, I don't know, I'm still trying to think, should I just like type quickly in my iPhone, when I'm on the go, or how can I remember these? Because I feel like these are very, these could be something, very, something that you can work with in order to create content, in order to just like get ideas. So that's why I think directed journaling probably is actually a very good way to go to start and to be focused and to write things down, because, it's just like a sort of like when we are thinking, we have all these thoughts coming, and I think it's very important to hash things out.
Mm-hmm. I think that's really helpful. And when Dr. Vonda Wright was on, and she was talking to us about how we can complete our books when that's a goal, but using the notes, like the dictating option on your phone, can be a really nice choice in that moment. And the directed journaling could bring us back to that. So you might even recreate the setting. Okay, like when I was picking up the peppers in the store, like what was it I was thinking? Kind of like create that trigger to bring it back for yourself. But I love that. So you had the product coming, it's going to facilitate it. I love that so much. Trina, have you had any experience with this, like using directed journaling or some of those questions to help bring forth ideas? Or do you have any suggestions on how to kind of nurture that creativity? What's helped you in this space? Because you've been producing a lot, right, with your courses and with the podcast upcoming.
Right. No, I mean, it was a new concept whenever she was talking about that. I have been doing some journaling as part of, my life coach training. That was something that was encouraged. I had not been a journaler before then. Back when I got divorced, I journaled quite a bit, found it to be helpful. And then as I felt better, I kind of got away from it. So I would say maybe that's one piece of advice. Like, you don't have to just journal when you feel bad or when you're upset, that it can actually be something that brings a lot of clarity and can help you reach that next level. So I have gotten back into journaling, but I haven't been doing what she said about getting it all out, then going back and reviewing, looking for some common themes. I've just sort of been getting it out and moving on to the next day. So I think that that's something that I would like to start doing.
Mm-hmm. And perhaps we all report back, right? Take some of these thought downloads we have and then be surprised by what themes come up when we take that inventory. Kara, how about for you? You mentioned this with your clients, right? Asking them some pointed questions. Do you use this yourself on how you kind of process thoughts and ideas?
I do. I'm the eternal list maker. I went through probably 20 years of just filling out the first page in a journal and then having a stack of journals that I never used. So I finally just had to like release the pressure around journaling perfectly, right? Perfectionism is the common theme in my clients. So for me, it had to be one, accessible. So like the iPhone, whether it's access to the Google Docs app on your phone, so you can just scroll, type something in quickly, or notes. But I'm still old school, and I still use the Moleskine journals. And this is my planner. So like, it's basically not a planner. It's just list and list and list. So that becomes my journal, because sometimes I'll have the discipline to sit down and do like a thought download formally. But a lot of times it's just like, I have like these 3 ideas of things I need to do. And that is the journaling for me. So I think having some flexibility around what does journaling actually look like, and figuring out what works for you, so you don't end up with the 20 unused journals with only first pages in there.
I'm with you there. For me, journals I pretty reliably use, but like planners where there's dates, always, right? It's used for 2 weeks. And then I try to turn them into like recipe books or something where I can repurpose or wait for the calendar to come around again, right? So that the dates match up. That's always a fun experiment. What was recommended here as well was calling back to your mission and your motto, right? So when you are doing this, and you can use that as a screen, right? Because like you said, there's a whole bunch of ideas and we have lots of pages, and we can look for the patterns, and we can also say which ones match up the best, right? Which ones are actually moving me forward toward that goal. And what was interesting in here, and I've heard each of you say this in different ways, is to set yourself up for success. So when you are exploring those options, like pick some goals you can guarantee that you can do, right? We often pick the huge one, and that's okay. And we have some steps that we'll look at towards taking that. But how do you find that space where you can set yourself up for success and choose something that is doable? Trina, has that come up for you? You mentioned that with the podcast challenge. Are there other ways you found to really prime the pump for success?
Well, actually, one of the techniques that we learned this year through training about setting goals was this idea, which I had never done before, of not only writing out the list of everything that you need to do, breaking it into bite-sized pieces, but then estimating times that each of those things are going to take, and then scheduling them on the calendar. That was something that I had never done before, which was a new skill that I learned this year, that if I really wanted to be successful with goals, it's not good enough, at least for me, to just write out the list, to just break it down into bite-sized pieces. I need to take that extra step of scheduling it on the calendar. And then, of course, you have to honor what you put on your calendar. But I think that that's really helpful, because then you ensure that it gets done.
Yeah. And Kara, how about for you? How do you find that set yourself up for success?
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, I dedicate Sunday mornings every week to just like laying out the things that need to get done. And every morning when I wake up, I say, what is the most important thing I need to do today? So no matter what, you get that thing done, and anything above that is success. But I agree, like the planning stage is everything. And I love being a fly by the seat of my pants kind of girl for most of my life. But, as time margin gets narrower and narrower in the adulting world, to really just say, I'm booking 6 hours to just like create and do what I need to do, so that you have the margin later on to adapt or to implement the things that you need. So especially, I'm planning a course starting in January, similar to what Trina's doing. And so it really needed that amount of focus, so that once it's implemented, then all the pieces are already in place.
And how do you deal, either of you could answer this or both, when it doesn't go to plan, right? So you've estimated this time and you put it on your calendar, and then you find it's either taking much longer. How do you cope with that? Maybe we'll say, or give yourself leeway or adjust accordingly. How does that happen for you?
I would just say that the concept that's been the most helpful for me is the concept of B- work, and that meaning it just doesn't have to be perfect. And so certainly I might have budgeted an hour, and I may choose to go beyond that. But I think this whole mentality this year of it doesn't have to be perfect to be able to move forward. And it's funny, I remember whenever I got remarried and I was planning my wedding, I very much had that mentality, because you can get so caught up in the details. And I remember thinking, okay, how many weddings have I been to? How many do I actually remember what the flowers looked like? What kind of food they had, all these details that people obsess over. And so I like that mentality as well for this. Like, I can get obsessed with picking the perfect template on Canva or, the perfect colors. And so then I'm like, okay, wait a second. Are people really paying attention to this? Do they care? This is good enough. It gets my point across. I can move forward.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I see some nodding happening here as well. Does that seem true for you as well, Kara?
Yeah, B- work was the first thing that came to mind, and done is better than perfect. I mean, done is better than perfect. Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, the amount of mental energy that you waste over, oh my gosh, I'm running behind. Oh my gosh, I really need to get this done. Oh, I said I was going to have it done yesterday. It's not done. Like, you could be doing something really super spectacular. So just like finish it, close it out, and be done. And owning your mistakes is also really helpful. Like, yeah, I plan to do this like really over the top thing, but today we're going to curtail it and do this instead. And then we'll move on. That's really helpful.
I think that's something that is a hard lesson for us, but so helpful when we learn it. Parastoo, how about for you? How do you find it possible to set yourself up for success and find those doable goals?
So I think the same as similar to Kara and Trina. So I think we belong to sort of like the same coaching space. So I also learned to just incorporate that scheduling, on a weekly basis. I usually just do that on Sunday evenings. That's when I sit for almost an hour and write things down in my planner, and make sure that I dedicate specific time to each sort of like whatever I plan to do for the following week. And I really find this very useful, because I feel like I always have this on my mind if I don't write it down, and it's always sort of like overwhelming me because I'm trying not to forget. But as soon as I put it physically on a piece of paper, then I know it's out there and I don't need to really worry about it. And obviously, nothing is 100%. There are things that, they're not happening. And what I have had challenges with, I think, is mostly with, I think we are all like that. So I starting with easier things that they don't need a lot of mental energy when they're on my schedule. And I just sort of like leave the most important things, or the things that need more mental energy, just like later on. But then I learned with time that it's just sort of like it brings me much more freedom just to basically do the most scary task on your daily to-do list, just the very first thing. Even if you want to pick one, just pick the worst one, the one that is intimidating. And that, I think, has helped me just like push myself forward, because as soon as that's done, then I know that the rest are going to be done. Obviously, it's just like work in progress, right? And I think it's very important to just be compassionate with yourself. It is what it is. We all are human beings. We have human brain, and we should basically give ourselves some grace. If things are not happening, it's okay.
Absolutely. And that's a kind of eat that frog mentality, right? The Brian Tracy.
Right, exactly.
Just take it on. I love that. And so we moved to the B, right? So we had the D, where we determined our mission, E, explored options, and then the B is brainstorming your path. And here is the opportunity to brainstorm all the goals, right? And this is maybe that space where we get to lay it all out, and then we get selective about them, and looking at what's personal and what's professional on there, and then dividing them into long and short term, and seeing how they can be complementary. And I'd love to visit that space with each of you, because we can notice that when we have a goal in our personal life, it can actually support what's happening in our professional life. Like, if it is to be healthier, right? When we eat better or sleep more, we naturally show up differently at work. And so how has this worked for you? The active brainstorming, right? So getting it all out, like we said, putting it all out there on paper, then seeing what's professional, what's personal, and what can be categorized into long and short term. Kara, do you want to talk with us about any of these and how you approach that?
Yeah, with the brainstorming in particular, I find it helpful to tie it back to your motto, because obviously you want to put out every idea that you could possibly think of, especially the really crazy ones. And often you'll be like, nah, that's not going to work, or I can't ask that for that help, or that seems really wild. And when it gets back to your motto, often when it's not about you, you can get out of the way and say, this is clearly the path forward that I need to take. And I don't have to make it about me. It's about these people that I'm really helping. So that really helps clarify when you're looking at this wide variety of directions, like what is the best way forward. And then, yeah, I mean, I think we're all coaches here. So I think this is certainly will resonate with y'all, but particularly for the listeners. I mean, the reason I'm still practicing medicine is because I'm coaching. I mean, when I started coaching, very frankly, I was like, this is my out, this is how I'm going to get out of practicing. And the more I coach, the better I am with my patients, and the more I can tolerate the dysfunction of medicine. And so it's really interesting that when I created this space for something, that it really enhanced what I was already doing and helped me recognize I would really miss my professional life that I had set out to do. So I guess that's really it. Finding something that brings you joy, whether it's personally, professionally, or ideally both, really helps fill your cup. Because back to that idea of fun that you were mentioning earlier, Parastoo, this whole idea that we have to be performative and achieving all the time, like, okay, just to show up and have fun. And like, that is a really sustaining thing that will keep you doing whatever it is that you really want to do. So I'm working on that.
I love that. Yeah, so important and so encouraging, right? That it is when we even give yourself the out, right? You were saying, okay, right, I've created this exit strategy, and you also give your permission to stay. So to hold space for both of those to be possible is so encouraging. Parastoo, how about for you, as far as brainstorming, finding the personal and professional space, or the short and long-term version of your goals?
So in terms of brainstorming, I think the advantage for me is that when I put everything, on a piece of paper, again, I think it's just like you give it, so it's just getting real. It gets more real. Either it's negative or positive. So just like we have this practice for the month of December in the coaching school for the impossible goals, that basically you pick up a goal that's so big and so huge that you're sure that you're not going to achieve that. And then you work towards that goal for the next year, which is actually a very interesting idea because it challenges you in a way that you pick something really big that you know that you're not going to achieve, and then set yourself for failures. And the idea is that by each fail, you basically learn and just move forward. So a part of this was actually the brainstorming about all these scary thoughts that come to your mind when you think about that goal. And I was doing this very recently, and it's interesting that the instruction is that just let your brain go wild. Just don't filter yourself. Just pick all these wild and dark thoughts and write them down. And I felt that was actually very relieving, as I put all these crazy thoughts and say, I can't, I'm going to fail. This is just like this. I never can do that. And then I went back and I read that, and I felt like, oh, okay, so that's not that scary. Initially when it's just like all here in your brain, you're just like so scared and jaded, and you're sort of like, I think you don't want to face them. But when they're on a piece of paper, you say, oh, okay, so I'm going to fail. Okay, that's fine. I can deal with that. I think that there is something about pen and paper maybe, or something, when we do this sort of thought download or write things in our journal or planner, that's probably why a lot of us still are using the physical pen and paper and do not give that up into doing digital planners. So I think that brainstorming is sort of like an outlet for me, maybe, it's just like, or frees me from all these, sort of like thoughts.
Yes, so helpful. And I agree. I think when we do physically write it, there is a transformation that happens, and we decide, oh, it could be real, right? It's just an idea, and it doesn't have to be scary. I love that. Trina, how's brainstorming coming up for you? And are you seeing any overlap between the personal and professional goals that you have?
Right. Yeah. No, I love the idea whenever we're brainstorming that you can write anything, and that you don't have to try to constrain yourself with what you think is realistic. I think that that's very freeing to just be able to put anything on paper. One of the strategies that I learned this year related kind of to brainstorming is sort of writing everything out, and then also kind of thinking about obstacles. And then whenever we think about what all these obstacles are, then thinking of strategies. And then that kind of can go on our brainstorming list of all the things that we want to do or how we're going to reach our goals. And I thought that was a really cool way of doing it, is anticipating obstacles, coming up with strategies, and then adding that to our list of all the possible ways that I can, reach my goal or achieve something. Mm-hmm. So that was one thing that I learned this year that I thought was really cool. And then in terms of just this idea, I liked what she was saying about sometimes your personal and professional can overlap. And I just think that helps take some of the pressure off of it. I think we all have a lot going on. We're all pressed for time. It's very easy for us to feel overwhelmed. There's so many things we feel like we should be doing. And so I just liked whenever she mentioned that, because I was kind of like, oh, okay. So I could be doing one thing and it's helping in both aspects of my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's so encouraging, because we often will feel that guilt, right? We should be here, we should be there. And knowing, just like Kara shared, when we're investing time in this coaching space, this alternative business, actually it helped my physicianship improve. And those pleasant unintended consequences can be so helpful. Let's talk a little bit about that long-term, short-term goal. And you all mentioned these strategies you have around planning. And I found this too. I'll often try to front load, right? I'll make that whole list and then I go to schedule it and I put it all on Monday. It's like, well, let me just get it all done really quick. How do you find it effective, to be able to actually space things out, right? To give that realistic time assessment. And even sometimes, right, this practice of taking this thing I want to do and putting it like 3 weeks out, and that sometimes seems so scary, and that we're abandoning it, or we should be able to get it done sooner. How do you navigate that space? What's been effective for you? Parastoo, let's start with you and your strategy. Like on those Sunday evenings, how do you manage that and give yourself the space to actually put something, a day, a week, a month in advance?
So what I do is that I usually start with long term, and then I try to basically divide them into sort of like shorter term goals, just like go, I don't know, with 5 years, where do I want to be in 5 years? I think, how would my future self, how would I envision myself in 5 years? And then I think from there, I start coming back, and then just 3 years and 1 year. And I think that helps you to get a sense of timing. And then when you get to 1 year, then I think that makes it easier to go into sort of like 12 months or even quarters if you want to do that. And I think that gives you a better idea. So then by the end of this month, if I really want to achieve this by the end of the year, then by the end of this month or this quarter, I need to just do this and that. I think that's something that I found helpful.
Yeah, that's so great to pan out, right? So then it makes it a little bit easier to strategize the long term within the year, when you also have that perspective of like, I have 5 years to get X, Y, and Z done. That's super helpful. Trina, what's been helpful for you in that space to be able to actually, right, say maybe this podcast is your goal and it's okay, right, for it to take 1 week, 6 weeks, 6 months, how do you decide that?
Right. So I think one thing that I have really been trying to work on is my mindset. So certainly the practical techniques, like we've already talked about, breaking it down into bite-sized pieces. But I think in talking about mottos, a couple of the other mottos that I have learned this year, again, through my training and the people that I hang around with now, are the motto of there is not better than here. I've really been trying to embrace that one, because that's very different than how I've always believed in my life. And then also not to be in a hurry. And again, we don't have to be in a hurry if we truly believe that there's not better than here. And so I've been trying to work on embracing these ideas and really believing these ideas, because then if I truly believe that, and I truly believe that I'm not going to be a happier person, whenever I have a business that makes X amount of dollars or whatever, then I won't feel so much pressure to try to do it all now. And that's one thing I noticed as I was just getting started with trying to figure out this coaching business, is I was trying to do all of these things and subscribe to all these people and listen to all these voices and buy all these programs. And I got very upset and very depressed and feeling so frustrated. And so I've tried to pull back and really practice these beliefs. And so then I think that if I truly believe these things, then I won't feel like I have to do everything right now. And then I can space things out a little bit more.
Yes, I love that, right? It's not always just those pragmatic strategies, but we have to look at the undercurrent there as well. Thank you for that. Kara, anything you'd like to add to that short and long-term visioning and how to hold space for yourself when you're making those plans?
Yeah, the concept that I work on that's similar to Trina's is that everything happens right on time. That's it. I mean, it's easy to compare and despair and think like, oh, these people are ahead of me, or oh, we never think like, oh, I'm so far ahead of all these other people. It's always, I'm not quite there yet. And so I think just being like the things that I'm capable of doing now, even though I wanted to do them 2 years ago, I just didn't have it in me. I didn't have the network. I didn't have the resources. I didn't have the mindset. So like the things I'm capable of doing now is because I just put in daily consistent work, and also acknowledging with compassion that I can't do the work at the same level every day. You know, the days I'm in clinic, like those are low volume, you know, personal time and coaching time. You know, my time is spent seeing patients. And so just saying like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, like I get a little bit of stuff done, maybe sometimes nothing. And then like on Wednesdays and Sunday mornings, like those are my big like bolus times. And just saying like, it's okay to ebb and flow, you know, it's not a race. Everything happens exactly when it's supposed to happen. So it's given me some self-compassion around that.
Yeah, we need some stickers from these phrases we're hearing tonight for reminders. And that moves into Debra's next point of posting the goals everywhere. And I'm really curious if any of you are utilizing this technique. We mentioned our planners. You mentioned, you know, downloading our thoughts each day to get them out of our head. But she made the recommendation to put them up, right? And so maybe it is that 1 quarter goal, right? So you see that. I don't know if anyone has watched Ted Lasso, right? He has Believe Post-it noted everywhere in his apartment and in the room. And do you utilize this? Are there places where you do put the reminders up, or have you found that to be successful for your clients? Trina, is this a technique you've utilized or seen to be helpful?
I have a fail story.
Oh yeah, let's hear it.
I don't want fail stories.
Oh, we do always.
One time somebody told me, and it probably does work for some people. It did not work for me, but they told me to make my goal into my password. And so I made a weight loss goal into my password. And all year long, I typed in the password and I still didn't lose the weight. Maybe that strategy might work for some people, but I do actually have like a vision board. Like one time I went to a vision board training session. This was pre-COVID, but I actually still have that vision board taped on my mirror, and a lot of the same things that I thought then and wanted then. But so every single morning when I'm brushing my teeth, I actually look at those pictures and think about that. So, and I have done before where I've written out phrases on sticky notes, posted it on the mirror, and that has helped. But the password for the weight loss didn't work for me.
Yeah, I'm curious. And we talk about the future visioning and as if it already happened. Did you write it as if it had happened, right? Like I weigh blank, or? No,
I said I was going to weigh a certain amount by my birthday.
Yeah.
That's a long passport.
But it'd be interesting, right? If you could write it in that future phrasing, right? Like on this date, I weigh this. And it could be a new experiment.
The password was shorter. I just don't want to tell you what the weight was or what my age was.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. But I'm just curious if we could tweak the voice, right? If we could tweak the voice and get it there. But I love that option, right? The Post-it notes up in those spaces and the vision board. It's so fascinating to me how there can be such differing opinions. I've been to vision board sessions where you're supposed to make it and then hide it. It's like the act of making it, you planted it in your subconscious and you like keep it under your bed, and then a year later you take it out. And then the others where you keep it, you know, where it's visible the whole year. So it's interesting to me, the different methods you know, you can always like Google till you find the thing that works with what you want to happen. Right. And Kara, how about for you? Have you used this kind of in your face goal setting to keep them in your field of vision?
Yeah, literally, it's my screensaver. Whenever I have a goal I'm working on, that's a screensaver. So like my goal for December was to go to bed at a certain time. So it's literally a screenshot out of a book that says sleep is a priority. So like every time I'm scrolling in my bed, I'm like, oh, literally it's time to go to bed. Put this thing away. So, I mean, I think it's just whatever works for you. Some people are pen and paper, some people are digital, but the thing that's going to catch your eye over and over again and like jog your memory, that's going to be it, whether it's right by your toothbrush or it's by the coffee pot or it's in your phone.
Yeah. And my coach actually advised for me to set alarms, and I rarely use them to get up at a certain time, but to bring up those words, right? So if you have the goal, or if you have like your mantra words or your word of inspiration for the year, just have that periodically throughout the day to just remind you, right? To bring you back into that space can be so helpful. Parastoo, how about for you? Are you using any forward-facing goal setting in your environment?
You know, I have not been doing that consistently. No, I'm not really sort of like a vision board or post-it person. Something that I do, I think I envision that, you know, when I'm driving, I try to do that, you know, my goals, and just like basically see myself when I'm there. But I think that's a great idea if you can just like basically have it somewhere that you can always look at it as a reminder. But I haven't been consistent about that.
Opportunity to grow, right? Should we choose to follow that path? Well, we've touched on many of the points, and I love how you brought them up, right? Getting the ideas out of your head to reduce the overwhelm. That was a key question that came up yesterday. And the last point I'd like to touch on before we hear from all of you on where everyone can find you is this concept of scared and excited, right? So when we are setting those goals, and Parastoo, you alluded to that, right? You put them all down, and at first they're scary, and they're like, actually, maybe it's doable. And scared and excited are often two sides of the same coin. And also in that, being scared to be successful, which is so interesting, because often we're scared of the failure, but there's also sometimes that fear of like, what if I do achieve it, then what, right? I've gotten there and that's where I thought I was going, and here I am. And that's in medicine, right? We kind of get to the attending level of like, wait a minute, this is supposed to come with all kinds of amazing bells and whistles that don't seem to be there. So how do you navigate that scared and excited space, especially when it comes to success? And Kara, let's start with you for this one.
It's a work in progress for me, but I think, you know, the goal is right when it terrifies you. You know, if it's too easy and too comfortable, you're not dreaming big enough. So part of me is like, if I'm like, oh yeah, I could totally do that, I mean, maybe that's a good use of my time, but usually the metric is that I feel like I want to vomit. That's the right goal. Okay, so that's my first metric. And then I think recognizing that happiness is now. I mean, not to get too cerebral about it, but we spend our whole lives on these train tracks, like undergrad, med school, residency, fellowship, attending, et cetera, et cetera. And then I find that so many, particularly women, but I think men too, get to about 40 and they're like, and now what? Like, what's the thing, right? And so when you delay your happiness indefinitely, waiting for this like benchmark, then it gets really hard. So even with these big goals, you need to be terrified, but treating the terror is also, and just being like, well, today I just have to make that phone call. That's the only thing I have to do to meet my goal today. And that feels a lot more manageable and a lot more in the moment.
And I love hearing that option, right? So choose that terrifying goal and make some doable success goals along the way. So you can have it all, right?
You're right.
I love it. Parastoo, how about for you? How do you navigate scared versus excited? Now you shared a little bit about that with your brainstorming. And how do you bring success into that and letting go of that fear of success?
I think what I learned recently throughout just basically mindset work is mainly just tapping into my whys. That's, or the mission statement that we were talking about, that's something that is really helping me to just basically keep myself on track. Whenever this fear comes, fear of success or fear of failure, I just try to see, okay, I'm just doing this. Why am I doing this? Just reminding myself that, why am I doing this? And I think that actually just sort of like at the very same moment that you start exploring those whys, So the fears actually start disappearing because you feel like, oh wow, that's a bigger thing, you know, and you just let the fear go. I find that very useful technique. And I think the same as Trina and Kara, they said earlier, all these fabulous mottos that they said, those are very helpful too, as they were saying that there is not better than here, or everything happens right on time. I find those also very inspiring and very helpful when you're in that moment that you're sort of like overwhelmed or the fear is coming. I think these are just like little reminders or little techniques that could be very useful.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's so helpful to normalize it, right? So it's okay to be scared or overwhelmed, and right, to carry on forward through that and to not let it be the stopper. That's so encouraging. Trina, how about for you, navigating that scared and excited space, especially when it comes to success?
Right. So one thing I would say about fear, and Parastoo kind of touched on this in that impossible goal where we try to fail. And I think it becomes something then that's not as scary. Like you're wanting it, you're wanting to get those failures. And so it's kind of changing the failures into something good instead of how we always think about them as something bad. I think that has been helpful. It's helped me not to be as afraid to fail. And then it's always kind of like, okay, where can I get my next failure? If I'm believing that success is built on the pile of failures, then you're excited to get those failures. And so that's one thing. And then actually, I would say coaching. So it was interesting when you said fear of success, because I found through coaching that I had this. So like when I was getting started becoming a coach, I had a fear of a client actually signing and then being like, oh, wait, now I actually have to coach them, what I have been trained to do. And so I worked with a coach and to work on that. And so it's interesting that you bring that up, because that is absolutely true. Like we think we want to be someplace, but there can be some fear that comes along, because then you're like, oh, wait, now people are actually depending on me and I have to show up as the expert and know what I'm doing and actually have to help people.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Well, so many great points here, and I hope all watching are having these takeaways and seeing how they can move forward, especially like we said, in this time of year, not because it's mandatory, but because it's kind of common cultural practice to set up our goals and to find ways to do that in a space of freedom from fear, embracing possibility and keeping it simple. I think that's been a theme we've seen. So let's just take a moment and let everyone know where they can find you, what you're doing right now, any upcoming projects that you have, your social media handles, of course, and then any closing remarks on goals. And Kara, we'll let you kick that off one more time.
Thank you. I am easy to find with this very clever handle, Kara Pepper MD. That's it. It's on every social media site. So that's easy to find me on social media. And then my website is similarly named, www.karapeppermd.com. So my big goal for this last quarter leading into the new year is to really start a group for women who are asking the question I mentioned earlier, like what's next? So it's a group of individual and group coaching for women physicians who are trying to figure out what their next step is. So it's entirely based around goal setting, skills building, community building, and really giving people the tools to make peace with medicine, decide if they want to leave or stay, deal with relationships that have been troubling, all those like friction points that we find at this stage in life. So for me, it's obviously comes from a very personal place, and it's what I'm coaching all my one-on-one clients on all the time. So I said, let's just do it as a group. So that's been my humongous goal. And so that is my big passion project. And then I've got some good stuff in store for quarters 2 through 4 too. But that's the big
excellent one at a time, right? We're taking it
one quarter at a time. That's it.
Yeah, and that course is enrolling, correct? It starts in January.
Yes, we're starting January 11th, which is like, oh my God, in 12 days. So
here we go. I know somehow that happened.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Parastoo, where can everyone find you? What's coming up for you, and any closing remarks on goals?
Sure. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter under the handle MindGutFitMD, and my website is also mindgutfitmd.com. And the whole idea of my business is around incorporating coaching into treating patients with functional GI disorder, because as we know, there is just a very strong connection between our brain and our gut, the brain-gut interaction. And I see a lot of patients with functional GI issues in the office on a daily basis, that we do endoscopies, we do colonoscopies, and we run all these tests and we don't find anything. And in the end of the day, we have to break this news that there's really nothing organic going on with you. And I think at that point, a lot of people I've seen that they really break, because they want an answer. And what I found very interesting about coaching is that sort of like thought work can actually has a significant impact in improving the symptoms of these patients. So I'm hoping to bring this idea to just like to expand it during the next year.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. No, that's so helpful for these patients who often feel like they don't have many choices, many options.
Right.
Yeah. So great. All right. And Trina, you can bring us home here. Where can everyone find you, and any closing remarks on goals?
Yes, so you can find me on my website. It's drtrinadorrah.com. And so TRINADORRAH, so drtrinadorrah.com. And I have a Facebook group, Women Moving Beyond Cheating and Divorce. So if you're a woman who's divorced or divorcing, if you know somebody who is, and particularly if they have been cheated on, I'd love to have them in my group, Women Moving Beyond Cheating and Divorce. And then on Instagram, it's just at Trina Dorrah. And I take one-on-one clients. And so I am working with women, like I said, who are trying to move past the pain of divorce and infidelity and just want to heal, get over their ex, and get on with their life. So you can contact me if you're interested in one-on-one coaching. And I guess just the last tip I would have on goal setting and getting started, another motto, like you mentioned, we need some stickers for our mottos, the start by starting. So I think we all say that all the time, just got to start by starting. And so I think that has been a good one that has served me well this year, is whenever I want to stay stuck, I just hear, people's voices that just say start by starting.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you all so much. It's been great to hear you share successes, failures, encouragement, all of it, the strategies to move forward. And I think we have a lot of great information. For me, you can find me on my personal page, Amelia Bueche, or at This Osteopathic Life on Facebook and Instagram. I'm still working on Twitter. We'll see how that comes through. And I'd like to just circle around to where Kara began and just remind us, right, to see how amazing we already are, and let that be the foundation on which we start to set our goals. Thanks all for joining. Thanks for everyone tuning in, and we'll see you next week for the Tuesday lecture and Wednesday panel.
Thank you.